Welcome to the second part of our spotlight on Alan Ayckbourn's play A Chorus of Disapproval. I'm the playwright's archivist Simon Murgatroyd, and I'll be looking at the journey of the popular play to the National Theatre and its transfer to the West End. A Chorus of Disapproval premiered at the Stephen Joseph's Theatre and the Round in Scarborough in 1984, although the impetus for writing it had been provided by Sir Peter Hall's interest in Alan writing a new play for the National Theatre. Hall was the artistic director of the National and had previously brought Bedroom Farce, Sisterly Feelings and, most recently and notoriously, Way Upstream to the South Bank venue. Way Upstream had premiered in 1982 and its technical issues, which at one point closed the entire venue down, had provided scores of headlines. Still, enough time had elapsed that Alan was ready to return to the National Theatre with a new work. Hall had proposed a new play for the end-stage Littleton Theatre, but with Alan's idea of an amateur operatic company tackling the Beggar's Opera, the Olivia Auditorium was the more obvious choice. Alan knew this when writing the play, which had his largest cast to date, with a company of 13 actors filling the small Scarborough stage. The leap from Scarborough to the Olivia was immense, but Alan allowed for this by planning to utilise the understudies to fill out the company on stage. This was a clever use of the resources. But let's go back to July 1984, 2 months after the play had opened and a year before it was to transfer to the National. Alan had already begun preparations and emphasised that casting needed to be done well in advance due to the play's special demands. Casting really shouldn't have been an issue. After all, Alan firmly knew who he wanted to play David ap Llewellyn, and that was Michael Gambon. He'd even clandestinely sent the actor a script, which he had loved. Despite this, Alan was bemused to continually find Gambon had neither been contacted nor contracted. It later transpired the National's casting department was not convinced Gambon would be interested and hadn't officially forwarded him the script. All this despite Alan telling them that Gambon was on board. But this was the least of Alan's problems. For the role of Guy Jones, Hall was very keen Michael Pennington should play it, and had apparently promised him the role without an audition. Pennington was, obviously, an excellent actor who would go on to found the English Shakespeare Company, but Alan was not convinced he was right for the part. This suspicion was confirmed after Alan asked him to audition, writing to his agent Margaret Peggy Ramsey afterwards and saying, "Pennington looked awful. I've seldom felt so sorry for a man." The musical director, Paul Todd, also expressed reservations about his singing ability. Despite this, Alan reluctantly agreed to cast him due to Hall's persistence, but insisted Pennington should have singing tuition with Todd so he would feel confident singing opposite such established singing talents as Gemma Craven, Imelda Staunton and Kelly Hunter. Unfortunately, there were wrangles over money, which meant no contracts were signed. Ergo, no singing lessons. A month before rehearsals were due to begin and Alan had no leading man. The only candidate would not have been fully prepared anyway. Pessimistically, he told Peggy that whoever he found now was almost bound to be second best. Fortune was on Alan's side though, as he bumped into Bob Peck, who was also at the National. Peck's professional acting career had begun under Alan at Scarborough, and Alan offered him the role of Guy immediately. Peck agreed, and Alan later said it was one of the best and most fortuitous things which could have happened to the production. Casting finally complete, and with Gambon finally contracted too, Alan had a company he was pleased with and thought was very strong, alongside a notable production team of Alan Targ on design, Lindy Hemming on costumes, with Mick Hughes on lighting. Production-wise, it had to be entirely rethought for the massive Olivia stage. The play had originally been performed in the Round on a double revolve, but Alan knew it would take some very clever staging to work in such a large space. His advice to Alan Targ was apparent simplicity and he wrote, "Everything we do to tell it should appear to be within David's limited budget. In that way, the two productions can intertwine completely, his and ours, no one ultimately certain where one begins and the other ends." A tall order, but one that Targ was on top of, and greatly impressed Alan with his solution, which he believed convincingly transformed the space. Alan later joked to the National they should keep the design permanently, which didn't go down well at all. A Chorus of Disapproval opened on the 1st of August 1985 at the National and was already being predicted for great things by Peggy. She wrote, "The National are aware A Chorus of Disapproval is going to be an enormous success." Her prediction was prescient, although the critics were mixed in their responses. While attracting predominantly positive notices, there was a strong difference of opinion to the quality of the play and, frequently, the pace of Alan's direction. What was obvious, though, was the play was going to be a phenomenal commercial success for the National. It also went on to win 3 Best Comedy Awards, the most Alan had yet received for a single play, and this included his first Olivier Award. The success of the show and the limited schedule of the National inevitably led to almost immediate questions about the play's future. One thing Alan was certain of, though, he wasn't interested in it transferring to the West End, and he wrote several cognizant points during August 1985 against this idea. Peggy passed these on to his normal West End producer, Michael Codron, who wasn't particularly impressed by the production anyway, being not particularly keen on Bob Peck. The National intended to transfer the play, though, preferably by the end of May 1986. Notably, most of the cast were only contracted until April 1986, and Alan knew Gambon would not transfer and firmly believed the production would not survive without him. This began a protracted period of negotiation, which culminated in Alan reluctantly agreeing to a transfer with a new cast, so long as he was involved in it, particularly as he believed any transfer would need considerable work to bring it to the standard of the existing production. He had seen what could happen with badly handled transfers, as when the National Theatre transferred Bedroom Farce to the West End in 1978. Alan had not been directly involved, and the production had suffered as a result. The hope must have been that the transfer would be a relatively smooth and simple operation. It wasn't. With Codron having shown little interest, the producers were Peter Baldwin and Robert Burns, with Alan telling Peggy he found Baldwin both uncommunicative and over-anxious. He was also frustrated at the producers' apparent reluctance to commit, which meant he had lost a number of favoured actors. Their proposed theatres also did not impress, with their preferred choices Alan describing as his 2 worst possible choice of venue in the West End, and he urged Peggy to intercede with Baldwin. Alan essentially needed to recast the entire production, and with Gambon leaving, Alan had the fortuitous luck to find Colin Blakely was available and interested in the role of David, a role Alan believed he would excel at. Unfortunately, Baldwin believed Blakely was not a big enough star, and if he was cast, a star name would be needed for the role of Guy Jones. Alan has always despised star casting in the West End and was not happy with where his producers' priorities were laying. By March 1986, with many of the original cast's contracts due to expire and recasting incomplete, Alan found himself at loggerheads with the producers. Still struggling to find a theatre, Alan heard the producers intended to put the transfer on ice for 3 months. Alan was very forthright in noting he wouldn't be available in 3 months, and he doubted many of the actors would be either. Such was his state of frustration that Alan suggested to Peggy the whole transfer should be shelved. He ended the letter with a damning note. All this seems to have gone wrong somewhere, doesn't it? However we set about it in future, it had better be done differently. We seem to have expended more time and energy in trying to transfer the thing than I did in writing it in the first place. Fortunately, possibly as a result of deadlines and Alan threatening to walk away, a suitable venue was found and the casting agreed. Blakely was cast as David, with Jim Norton as Guy, who Alan had originally considered for the role at the National. The company took over the play at the National in April 1986 before transferring to the Lyric Theatre and opening on the 4th of June 1986. Correspondence indicates Alan was still far from convinced the transfer was necessary or would be successful. However, the reviews were consistently good, with Colin Blakely receiving almost unanimous praise for his energetic performance as David. Against the odds, it seemed as though everyone had a West End hit on their hands. Unfortunately, there were even more troubles ahead. During the run, Blakely was beset with ill health, which seriously affected the amount of performances he was able to do. Eventually, he became so ill he was unable to perform the role, and Russell Dixon, who had originated the role of David in Scarborough, took over the part. After the show's closure, producer Peter Baldwin noted the play had been beset by misfortune. I feel that the final figures reflect the extreme bad luck we suffered on the production, which was doing quite nicely until Colin's recurring illness, which coincided with our busiest period and killed any impetus that the show had developed. A Chorus of Disapproval closed on 7th of March 1987, having not managed to recoup its costs. Far worse news, though, was the shock death of Blakely on 7th of May 1987 from leukaemia. This led to an unusual coda for A Chorus of Disapproval. Blakely was well respected within the profession, and on 4th of October 1987 a memorial evening was held at the Lyric Theatre. Amongst the tributes was a short piece, An Evening with Palos, written specially for the event by Alan, with David Jason taking on the role of David and members of the national production resuming their roles. This short, funny sketch is the only sequel Alan has written to any of his plays, and demonstrated Alan's admiration for what Blakely had achieved with A Chorus of Disapproval. A Chorus of Disapproval would be released for professional and amateur production shortly after its West End run, and would become hugely successful. It is one of the most produced and popular of all Alan's plays. And, of course, it would then also notoriously lead to the film adaptation, which we'll be looking at in part 3 of our Spotlight on A Chorus of Disapproval.